SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota Legislature and in-depth reporting from peer. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Peer. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota Legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. House State Affairs will now come to order for our second session of this happy Monday. I would ask everyone to please take a seat, have your phones turned to silent. If you plan on testifying today, please make sure to sign in at the back of the room. And if you're testifying and have handouts, please give the handouts to the pages who are up here to distribute to the committee members. If you're a lobbyist, please make sure you're wearing your badge and that it's clearly visible. If you're testifying and wearing a hat, we'd ask you to remove it while you testify. If you're joining us online, our committee information can be found on the LRC website, and our email address is housestateaffairs@sdlegislature.gov. Finally, a reminder that all testimony and all questions should be addressed this afternoon through the chair. At this time, I would ask the secretary to please call the roll.
Representatives Baumüller.
Here.
Emery.
Here.
Gosh excused. Hansen.
Aye.
Healy excused. Heineman.
Aye.
Jamison.
Here.
Lems.
Here.
May. Excused. Reich. Excused. Schaefbauer. Overwig.
Here.
Odenbach.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We do have a quorum. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Hansen, second by Baumüller. Those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The minutes are approved. At this time, I would ask the pages to come up to the microphone to introduce yourself, state where you're from, and briefly mention any future plans.
Hi, I'm Raquel Mitzel. I'm from Hoven, and my future plans are to go to Lake area for dental assisting.
Hi, my name is Veronica Thomas. I'm from Harrisburg, and my future plans are to go to a four-year institution and become a paralegal.
All right. All right. Thanks for being here this afternoon. To the both of you, is there any announcements or personal privileges from the committee? Okay, hearing none, then let's talk about our agenda this afternoon. We are going to take all 5 bills in order. We are going to allocate 8 minutes aside for proponent and opponent. And so we will get started, first of all, with Senate Bill 151, require the publication of the results of an election for precinct committeeman or committeewoman and to declare an emergency. Proponent testimony. Welcome, Senator Hulse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Amber Hulse. I am a state senator for District 30. This is a very simple bill, and I came to learn about this actually as I ran for a party position during the last convention, and it realized that it was actually really difficult to figure out who all were the precinct people that held these positions if you're running for one of those offices that are elected at the convention. And so I think it's important that the public, first of all, know who their precinct men and committee women are, but also who are running for those slots, and that those election results then are published so that, if you want to tell your precinct man or committee woman for your precinct what you think about the different people running, that you know who they are, because it's actually really hard to find that information all in one spot, especially for those candidates who are running at that convention as well, to be able to contact these folks. And so that's why it's an emergency. We have a big election coming up, lots of things at the convention this year. And also I had a couple of comments too about whether or not this would cost anything, and I've spoken with the Secretary of State's office about this. They believe that the county auditors are supposed to be actually sending this information to them about who all is running, but we don't know what we don't know. We don't know if there's somebody running for precinct person that isn't being published, so this just puts it into statute requiring that they do that in case it's not happening. And then Total Vote actually allows them to very easily publish a report of all of these elections across the state. So it's not a very difficult or onerous task to do, and something that would really help ensure that we know who are voting at this big convention for all of our constitutional offices. And with that, I'll stand by for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other proponent testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and House State Affairs Committee. I'm Rebecca Reimer, District 26B, and I'm just going to give a short Me Too because I respect your time and your calendar. So Me Too, and hope you vote green.
Thank you. Any other proponents?
Good morning, or good evening, Mr. Chair, sorry. Leah Anderson, Minnehaha County Auditor. Just from an auditor's perspective, this is a very easy thing. We already do it, or we should be doing it, entering every candidate into Total Vote. So therefore, the state should have those candidates. So fully support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Further proponent testimony? Okay, online, maybe. It says on my list we have Rick Weibel. Can you hear us, sir? If so, state your name, who you're with, and proceed. Okay, we also have, moving along, a list of names including Sabrina Green. Can you hear us? Okay. No Rick Weibel either? Okay. All right, well then we will flip over to opponent testimony. Any opponents in the room or online? Okay. Then we will close the taking of public testimony. If there's nothing else and no opposition, we will turn it over to committee questions. Are there questions from the committee? Okay, hearing none, I'll move to committee discussion or action.
I move to pass.
Motion by Baumüller, seconded by Hanson, is due pass. Any discussion on that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think this is a simple cleanup bill. Thank you for bringing it. Appreciate it.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is due pass on Senate Bill 151. Those in favor of the motion would say aye. Those opposed, no. The secretary would please call the roll.
Representatives Baumüller.
Aye.
Emery.
Aye.
Gosh. Hanson.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Heineman.
Aye.
Jameson.
Aye.
Lems.
Aye.
May.
Aye.
Reich excused. Schaefbauer.
Aye.
Overwig.
Aye.
Otenbach.
Aye.
12 ayes, 1 excused.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. After receiving a majority of members-elect, the due pass motion passes. Senate Bill 151 goes to the floor with a due pass recommendation. Committee will be at ease for a second as we determine the whereabouts of our Senate colleagues. Okay, we will defer on 159 till further on in today's session, and I'll move on at this time to Senate Bill 171, amend provisions pertaining to the processing of absentee ballots and to declare an emergency. Is there any proponent testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome.
Leslie Heineman, District 25, Moody and Minnehaha counties. I bring before you Senate Bill 171. There is an amendment. I would like you to move at this time.
Has it been published?
It has.
What is it called?
171A.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Representative Hansen.
I move Amendment 171A.
Motion by Hansen, seconded by Lems to move 171A. Any discussion? Okay, then all in favor of the motion to amend would say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. We are on 171 as amended. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was a little bit of just a clarity type issue there. Others following me will go ahead and go through the process of what we're talking about, but the important thing I think you need to realize is more and more elections are having absentee ballot measures cast. And some counties are at 20% and some are at 40%. So I think it's going to continue to grow, and this would be a way that they would be able to expeditiously count the ballots. The process they'll go through, but it just allows you to be able to get a little maybe more appropriate time to be able to tabulate what we need. So with that, I'll stand by for questions.
Is there any other proponent testimony here in the room?
Mr. Chair, Leah Anderson, Minnehaha County. So as Representative Heineman stated, absentee voting has become very popular. I'm a big proponent of election day voting, and here's why. Absentee voting really puts a large burden on our counties. It takes probably about, I would say, 3 times as much work for us to process absentee ballots. So that's extra time and money. And as that's growing in popularity and we have extended time to vote, we get a lot of ballots. So in the general 2024 election, Minnehaha County had 30,000 absentee ballots to process. That's a lot. Currently, with proper notification to the county parties, the auditors may begin processing absentee ballots the morning of election day and then can begin to tabulate prior to the close of polls as long as they notify the county parties. The changes in this bill, and I'll go through a few of those, would greatly improve that timeliness of reporting by allowing us to begin processing ballots, and I'm not talking about tabulating or counting them, but just the processing of them on the Monday prior to the election, just in regular business hours. So that would be from 8 to 5 on Monday. And this is done by an absentee board, not the county auditors. So in section 1 of the bill, the person in charge of the election will forward any updates to those who have already, that have voted absentee on the Monday. So we print our registration lists that go out to the polling place on Saturday, and people are still allowed to vote on Monday. So section 1 of this bill would just clear up some language and make it codified law that we need to notify those polling places, the precincts, of anyone that's voted on that Monday or has turned in their ballot on Tuesday. I know in the 24 general election, I had a voter that voted twice. We caught that when we entered voter history, but we didn't catch it when they voted because we did not have the capability to do that. He voted on Monday and then showed up Tuesday morning and voted. That case ended up going to court and it's all settled now. Section 2, this is some cleanup by the LRC, but when you get to the red section, regarding the 10 or few voters, that was removed because the counties that have absentee precincts are not likely going to have 10 or few voters in a precinct. If we have an absentee voting precinct, we're going to have more than 10. Section 2 on page 2, lines 30 through 33. This portion was added to allow counties to be able to print the absentee registration list that we have in Total Vote to create our poll book instead of handwriting all of those names. So currently in my county, we were required by the state's attorney's office to handwrite the names into the poll book just as they do at the polling place. That takes a long time for an 85-year-old or a bunch of 85-year-olds or 80-year-olds to write down names, especially 30,000 of them. So that would be a change that would speed up that process. Section 4, page 3, lines 23 to 33, and page 4, lines 1 through 3. This is the meat of the bill. This is the section that would permit the person in charge of the election to determine, based on quantity of absentee ballots, if the absentee counting board should assemble on the Monday prior to the election. This way they could start processing those ballots. What does that look like? It looks like taking the ballot envelope that's sealed, checking off that voter on the registration list, then opening, after they get all of those checked off, they would open those envelopes, separate the envelope and the ballot, put the ballot in the ballot box after it is stamped with the precinct stamp. Those ballots would then be sealed in the ballot box until Tuesday and would not be counted until Tuesday on election day. And again, they would have to give prior notice to the county parties in order to start tabulating early. If the absentee counting board convenes, again, like I said, prior to the close of the polls, we just have to notify the county parties, and all of that whole process, whether it's on Monday or Tuesday, has to be open to the public for viewing. I'm going to stand by for questions because there are other great people to testify.
Thank you. A couple minutes to go. Is there any other proponents here in the room?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Ellie Bailey. I'm a registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Advocacy Network for Women. This is a good common sense bill that promotes efficiency in elections, and we'd ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponent testimony?
Good afternoon, committee. Tani Heineman, Moody County Auditor. Moody County and Minnehaha share Legislative District 25. I have a lot less voters. So this would really help with getting the results out to the candidates quicker. I know my results are usually available that night. With all the absentee ballots that Minnehaha gets, it takes them a lot longer to get through it. So this would help. Not to mention Minnehaha, Pennington, some of the bigger counties that have the absentees make up a good percentage of voters for like the statewide races. So this just helps get results out faster. It gives the absentee board more time to be thorough and go through their process. So I would just ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents here in the room? Got time for some Me Too's basically at this point.
Yes, thank you, committee members. Jenna Baker from Brookings County. I am the finance specialist and election supervisor. Going to just do a quick Me Too, and I would appreciate your support.
Thank you. Any other proponents in the room?
Mr. Chairman, Tom Diedrich, Deputy Secretary of State. Since you want Me Too's, you've got one.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, then we'll turn to some online Me Too's. So we've got 4 people signed up. Sherry Lund, can you hear me? Please state your name, who you're with, and brief Me Too.
Yes, thank you. Sherry Lund, Lincoln County Auditor, and I'm a Me Too.
Thank you. Moving on, we have Rick Weibel. Same thing, state your name, who you're with, and brief Me Too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rick Weibel, Elkton, South Dakota, representing myself. Me too.
Thank you. And next, Lindley Howard. Ms. Howard, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Chair. Good afternoon. Lindley Howard, the McPherson County Auditor, and me too. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Sabrina Green, finally. Can you hear us, Sabrina Green? Okay, well, we've tried twice. No Sabrina Green. Okay, any other proponents in the room? Okay, if not, we'll turn to opponent testimony. Any opponents here? Okay. Any opponents online? Looks like I have two. Laura Kodalik, can you hear us? If so, state your name, who you're with, and give us your testimony. You've got about 8 minutes for opposition testimony.
All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Perfect. I'm Laura Katalik with District 18, and I'm representing myself. I'm testifying in opposition to SB 171 because I've listened to the prior testimony and I understand the issue of processing time for a large number of absentee ballots is concerning. However, my concerns are we're changing codified law for mainly one county struggling with the volume of absentee ballots and the processing time required. This bill will allow any county who decides they would like to process ballots on Monday the ability to exercise that privilege regardless of need. I've also noticed that with the word process being used in section 4, page 3, line 28 to mean what happens to absentee ballots. And then that same word is used in section 4 on page 4, line 1 to mean what a tabulating machine does. Counting or tabulating might be a more fitting word on that spot. So you have two different meanings for the same section. Another concern is that information is being entered into the electronic poll books prior to the opening of the polls, and that could be accessed or obtained from nefarious purposes. And so in closing, this bill has many good cleanup pieces, but it does open the door for accessing ballots and entering voter information into the electronic poll books prior to Election Day. And the polls opening, and the bill does not address the root problem, which is excessive number of absentee ballots. So I find it more acceptable if extra time would be needed to process the ballots, that time be after the polls close instead of before they open. And so I feel that this bill is a single county issue fix that may result in some unintended consequences. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jeff Stewart. Jeff Stewart, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please state your name, who you're with, and proceed. You guys have about 6 minutes left for opponent testimony.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, Jeff Stewart again, District 21, Wagner, South Dakota, representing myself and members of the committee. I appreciate the auditor's concern for the amount of time it takes to process and count absentee ballots. It is an issue, it's a problem. However, sometimes the remedy is worse than the problem. This bill could be misused by many, but only written for a couple of counties. In absentee precincts, it mandates the use of tabulators only for counting absentee ballots on Election Day before the polls close. This leaves too much room for nefarious actors. More poll watchers may be needed, and many more tight-lipped people. Whether this has been done in the past is inconsequential, in my opinion. Mandating the use of non-transparent tabulators with foreign parts, outdated security software, possibly certified to outdated EAC standards, and maintained by uncertified people is not a good remedy. Second, and in conclusion, I question whether this bill conflicts with or circumvents existing county authority as per South Dakota Codified Law 12-17B-3, which gives the governing body authority to adopt, experiment with, or abandon tabulators or an election system. I think the county already has authority to do what it says in SB 171. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other opponents? Okay, hearing none, we will give the prime a chance for a brief rebuttal.
Mr. Chair, Leah Anderson, Minnehaha County Auditor. I am going to attempt to do this rebuttal. The first thing I want to address from one of our opponents talked about the poll books. So the way we check in absentee voters is not through the e-poll books, it's through total vote. So when a person comes in to vote in person, we have to look them up into total vote and check them in and print the label for the envelope and give them their ballot. Every county does that. So that's what would be, and then when a person brings in their absentee ballot, if they got it by mail or they mail it back to us, we have to check in that ballot. That's what is going to create that list in section 4. So it doesn't have anything to do with the poll books, because like our county doesn't use poll books. We just use total vote. So I am not concerned about anybody having access to that information because they would have to log into Total Vote to get that. However, people do know when absentee voters return their ballot because they can get what's called an absentee voter list. A lot of people send out chase mail when a person requests an absentee ballot. So that information is already public record. The concern about 1217B, that section of codified law has to do with tabulation. So if a county decides to use tabulators, that is made, it's a decision that is made by the county commission, and that section of law is different than this section of law. So this section in 19 has to do with creating an absentee counting board, and whether or not a county has that absentee counting board is determined on, I guess, the volume of absentee ballots that they would have. So like in our case, our county has an absentee counting board because we have such a large volume. I think what's neat about this bill is that, yes, it is an issue for the larger counties, Minnehaha, Pennington, Lincoln. However, we've all come together and come up with solutions that would work. Some counties already are doing what is contained in section 4, where they're using those lists provided by Total Vote. Our county is not, because our state's attorney said we could not do that. We had to handwrite the names. So this is just cleaning up some of those processes that some counties are already doing.
Thank you. With that, we'll close the public portion of testimony and turn to committee questions. Are there any questions from the committee? I'll ask one then for Ms. Anderson. It may be in here. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. The term processing is used quite a bit in reference to taking these ballots when they're going to be stored or whatever before they're counted. Could you just describe what that all entails? You're taking them from things that are in an envelope, they're folded up, shall we say, when you do the processing, so you get them ready so you can then efficiently count them on election day, which we're working on here, I see. What does that processing entail?
Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you. Leah Anderson, Minnehaha County Auditor. The processing, well, first begins when the ballot is returned to us. So if the ballot is returned, if it's a mailed-in ballot, the first step in that process is to verify the signature and mark it into Total Vote that it was an accepted ballot. Or if the signature doesn't match or is not the right signature, sometimes we have people that sign the wrong ballots, then we mark that that's not acceptable. So in our county, we store and file all of those absentee ballots. We separate ours with in-person absentee and mailed absentee ballots. We file them by precinct and we file them alphabetically. They are in very large boxes. So you can picture a big room of 30,000 ballots filed in boxes. We lock that room. Those ballots then currently on election day in the morning would go to the absentee counting board. That counting board then currently in our county is they're taking a registration list to find the voter that voted, and then they're handwriting those names into the poll book. just like they do at the precinct. Then the next step after they do that, they count the number of ballots that they should have, the envelopes. They list them on the recap sheet, and then they take those to a slicer machine that opens up the envelopes. They come back to their table, they remove the ballot from the ballot envelope, and they separate them, they stamp the ballot, and then the ballots go into a ballot box. And then when they are complete with a precinct, those ballots are gonna go into the tabulation room to be tabulated. So that's if we're doing it on election day. If we're doing that process on the Monday prior, we would stop once they get into the ballot box. That ballot box would be sealed, and then it would be in a locked room, and it would not get tabulated until the next day.
Okay. Do you think, I have one other question for you. Do you think the length of absentee voting that we allow in South Dakota and the fact that you don't have to show cause for needing a ballot contributes to this glut of ballots and this problem that you're dealing with?
Mr. Chair, honestly, yes, I do. We have the longest absentee period that a state can have, and we have no excuse for absentee voting. I would love to see that changed.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, I'll move to committee discussion and or action. Representative Gosh.
Move to pass.
Motion by Gosh, seconded by Hansen. Is there any discussion on the do pass motion? Well, all I say is I concur with Ms. Anderson's analysis that the absentee voting goes on far too long and is far too easy, and it's contributing to this. You look back in history and we didn't have all this. Now we've got election bills that we deal with stacked up about as high as ballots from absentee people on the day of the election. So this bill actually gives me a bit of pause, frankly, because of all the things that are being done with the voted ballots on the day before they're actually counted. We have a batch of really great auditors and people working in South Dakota now, but God forbid if we ever didn't and had people who weren't honest and good in the future dealing with these ballots in this way. I don't think it's the best, but I understand their plight in dealing with this because people want those results. So I'll support it, but I'll also support continued efforts in the future to shorten up this absentee and tighten that whole thing up. Okay, any other comments? Okay, if not, the motion before us is do pass on Senate Bill 171. Those in favor would say aye. Those no. The secretary would please call the roll.
Representative Spa-Mueller.
Aye.
Emery.
Aye.
Gosh. Aye. Hansen.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Heineman.
Aye.
Jameson.
Aye.
Lems.
Aye.
May.
Aye.
Reich excused. Schaefbauer. Aye. Overweek excused. Odenbach.
Aye.
11 ayes, 2 excused.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. After receiving a majority of members-elect, the do pass motion passes. Senate Bill 171 goes to the floor with a do pass recommendation. Okay, having now found our Senate colleagues, we will go back to Senate Bill 159, and that is called Revised Requirements Pertaining to the Minimum Age for Marriage. 8 minutes aside. Proponent testimony. Welcome, Senator Pischke.
Well, thank you, Mr. Representative Odenbach and members of the House State Affairs Committee. I don't even know where I'm at. I would like you to amend my bill with 159E before we get started.
Has it been published?
It has.
Is there any motions on that? Representative Hansen. Motion by Hansen, seconded by May. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, then the motion is to amend Senate Bill 159 with 159E. All those in favor would say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, my name is Senator Tom Pischke. Come before you today from District 25, Del Rapids. Come before you today with Senate Bill 159. If you guys remember, there's actually this idea of bill to modify the requirements for marriage has been an issue that's been discussed in the legislature for the last couple of years. There was a bill before the Senate last year, which actually died on the Senate floor. The year before that, I believe, there was a bill that came before House State Affairs. I think that Representative Hansen, you might have been the only one that was on that committee at the time. But nevertheless, my point is that this idea has come before you in the past. This legislation makes 18 the clear and consistent legal standard for marriage in our state. It closes the current loophole that allows minors to marry with minimal oversight and replaces it with stronger safeguards, judicial review, in-person hearings, written findings about coercion and safety, a 30-day waiting period, a 2-parent consent requirement, and now it was amended in the Senate to be a 4-year age gap. Across the country, states are reevaluating their child marriage laws. Many have moved to ban marriage completely under the age of 18 entirely. Others, like this proposal, are tightening exceptions to ensure that when a minor is involved, the system prioritizes safety, voluntariness, and long-term welfare. Why does this matter? Because children are uniquely vulnerable to coercion and exploitation. A minor cannot sign most contracts, cannot purchase alcohol, cannot vote, yet in some circumstances can enter into a lifelong contract with profound legal and physical consequences. We all know that the national data for child marriage correlates with higher rates of domestic violence, interrupted education, economic instability, and early pregnancy. These same vulnerabilities are risk factors associated with exploitation and trafficking. In some cases, marriage has even been used as a legal shield, allowing adults to avoid scrutiny for relationships that would otherwise trigger statutory protections. This bill helps close those loopholes. Importantly, this legislation does not impose a blanket prohibition without consideration. It allows a narrow pathway for 16 and 17-year-olds, but only with meaningful oversight. Judges must meet privately with each applicant. They must make written findings of fact about safety and coercion, and a safety period ensures decisions are not rushed. Or another pathway is that the parents can just sign off on the marriage for a minor. This bill strengthens our laws, protects vulnerable minors, and aligns our state with the growing national commitment to safeguarding our children. I ask for your support on Senate Bill 159 as amended, and I'll stand by for questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any other proponent testimony here in the room?
Morning, Mr. Chair. Afternoon, Mr. Chair. Norman Woods, Family Voice Action. I was tempted to click the presenting button, but I know that doesn't actually apply today. Mostly want to come up to say we appreciate a lot of the stakeholders coming together, looking at different language from previous years rather than a hard no. This is let's provide a little bit more oversight. We respect the discussions that have been had. Before session, a lot of us kind of sat down, see where everybody could agree with, and the age cap was actually put at 10 years, and then in committee was changed to 4. We definitely have concerns there. We can understand, the additional oversight of judicial oversight, things like that. We think that could be a good step forward. If you're looking at the 4-year age cap, it's actually backwards and duplicative. So if you've already had either both parents or judicial oversight saying, okay, we've looked at the situation, we think this is in the best interest, everybody's entering in willingly, we're good to go. Having an age cap is itself a bit duplicative because you've already come to the conclusion of, hey, we've looked at this, we've examined it, we've talked to everybody, we think it's in the best interest of everybody. And then if you look at, for example, your 16 or 17-year-old daughter getting married to somebody who's 4 years older or 5 years older or 6 years older, I've actually talked with a lot of parents who they say, well, if the guy is a couple years older, maybe a 6-year age gap, maybe the odds are he's got a better job, maybe he's got things a little bit more stable, maybe he's in a better place in life. So I've actually heard from parents who were more comfortable if they felt like their daughter was maybe a little bit young, but we're still supportive and that he's a great guy and he's a few years older than her, he's got things figured out. So we would really caution you on the 4-year age gap, but we definitely understand the judicial oversight and we think that can be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further proponent testimony here in the room this afternoon? Okay, anybody online for 159 that's a proponent? I don't think so. Okay, so we'll move to opponents. Are there opponents in the room? 8 minutes for opponent testimony. Nobody in the room, then we have a list for Senate Bill 159 of online opponents, beginning with Becca Powell. Can you hear me? If so, state your name, who you're with, and proceed. Okay. Becca Powell, we haven't heard anything, so we'll move on to Kendall Evans. Kendall Evans, can you hear us? All right. Michelle Hanish is on my list. Hi there.
Hello.
State your name, who you're with, and please proceed. You guys have 8 minutes for opponent testimony.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and distinguished committee members for allowing me to testify today. I am Michelle Hanash. I'm an attorney and the Director of Policy and Women's Programs at AHA Foundation. We are a survivor-founded nonprofit working to end child marriage and other harmful practices. We also receive those help requests and provide services to those fleeing forced and child marriage. And for this reason, while I appreciate the bill sponsor's intentions, we urge you not to pass this bill or to amend the bill to actually end child marriage. Because of the limited time, I'm just going to talk to you about the incurable fatal flaws of a judicial review process, but please note myself and my colleagues have submitted more robust testimony written. So even with the safeguards, all that you can imagine in the world, judicial approval puts the onus on a terrified minor to tell the court that they are being forced to marry. So taking a look specifically at the proposed judicial review process here, the court first has to find that the marriage is in the best interest of the child, but how can child marriage be in the best interest of a child if marriage before 18 is considered a human rights abuse, and that's including by our own government? The court also has to find that the marriage is voluntary and free of coercion, but this is not possible. Globally, all child marriage is considered forced marriage because children lack the basic legal rights to give full and free consent to enter into this contract. So by definition, there is no consent. Second, practically speaking, minors are forced to lie and are coached on exactly what to say and often will be threatened with physical harm should they not comply. Even with the hearing and separate interviews, you're still putting that onus on a terrified minor to explain to the court that they are being forced to marry. And no minor that we or our allies have ever worked with notified the court that they were being forced when they were placed in this predicament because they were too scared. And these survivors say that just being put in this position compounded their trauma because now they felt complicit in their own abuse and rape. The 30-day waiting period, what does that do if you still have all the same limited rights of minority? Where can you go? Where are you supposed to seek help? All these so-called safeguards do is acknowledge that child marriage is harmful and dangerous. They only make us feel better as if we are protecting girls, but they do nothing to actually mitigate the harm. Finally, other states have tried and failed with this idea of judicial review, some with even more robust processes, like appointing a lawyer or a guardian ad litem, which this bill doesn't do. But these states saw that no safeguards could prevent child marriage or mitigate that harm, removing from the fact that you're putting still the burden on that child to somehow stop the marriage from going forward. These states have gone forward and later implemented good, clean legislation to end child marriage. So I ask you not to make this same mistake. Simply end child marriage now. At a time when the entire country is fixated on the sexual abuse and grooming of minors and the institutions that look the other way, we are asking you to stand on the side of the victims and not the perpetrators. Please vote no on this legislation or amend it to make the marriage age 18 no exceptions and protect the minors of South Dakota from abuse and exploitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, further opponent testimony on Senate Bill 159. My list has Brittany Wright. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please state your name, who you represent, and proceed with your testimony. You guys have about 4 minutes remaining.
What a privilege it is to participate in the systems that allow each American's voice to be heard. My name is Brittany, and I am a combat Army veteran, a nationally ranked award-winning triathlete, a mother. And at 16, after being recovered by the police, having been taken across state lines without the consent of my guardians, I was forced to marry my kidnapper at 17 years old. I'm not here to give you a sob story, committee members. I am here to represent the survivors of this practice in the 21st century. I am here to represent those who have been silenced by ignorance and so-called protective measures. I represent the victims of grooming and abuse who have been silenced by a marriage license.
Today, there are immeasurable ways to use technology to exploit children. At the click of a button, you can live stream child sexual abuse materials. Children are constantly targeted online across numerous platforms, all hours of the day. We need to stop pretending our grandmothers' and grandfathers' child marriage stories have any bearing on our decision-making in modern-day America. My story, and hundreds more like it, the grooming, both online and in person, began years before the marriage license is signed at 16 and 17 years old. We can no longer turn away and justify the grooming of young children, forcing them into marriages. We are not discussing sweethearts, lovebirds, or teens who wish to join the military. We are discussing children. The numbers are clear. If the stories of rape and abuse are not enough, then may I give you an example of my financial and legal abuse that I suffered. He didn't just withhold wages, he took my social security number, he opened several lines of credit, he opened and withdrew multiple bank accounts and purchased vehicles in my name, all under the guise of marriage, and all before I would be legally allowed to do so myself. When I was finally able to legally divorce at the age of 18, I was homeless for a year. I fought hard to finish my education and join the greatest military force that this world has ever known. What gives any adult the right to legally torture a child in this way? Distinguished committee members, I will leave you with this. It is safe to assume that you dated your spouse before you married them. So when is it okay for an adult to date a child? The answer is never. End child marriage in all of its forms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Okay, last up on the list is Frady Rice. Are you online and can you hear us? Okay. Then if I don't have anyone else online as an opponent, I'll ask one more time. Is there anybody in the room? Okay, then we will give the prime a chance for a brief rebuttal. Senator Pischke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Again, Senator Tom Pischke from Del Rapids, District 25. I want to just sympathize with the opponent, the last opponent you just saw. That's actually exactly why we need this legislation. There was a perfect example as to why this legislation is needed right there. This is narrowly crafted so that her situation as a 17-year-old, she would not be allowed to marry right there. So I can't thank her enough for offering her testimony and telling us why this legislation is needed. Again, I would ask you guys to reject the idea that we're going to just limit marriage to just 18 and over. You know, there's many situations. I told this story twice now on the Senate floor about how I had a classmate who was dating his high school sweetheart. They got pregnant. Both were 17 years old. He didn't want to have, both of them didn't want to have a child out of wedlock. They went before their Christian, their church community, said that what happened, and they got married both under the age of 18. If we were to outlaw marriage until 18, that wouldn't happen. So, but there are situations like the person that just testified that there are times where people are trafficked, and it is necessary to have these safeguards in place. So. I've proposed this legislation because it strikes a balance between the bad things that could happen and some of the good things that we can still move forward with and keep marriage as a sacrament. So I would ask for your support on Senate Bill 159. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, with that, we'll close the public testimony and turn to committee questions. Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Schaefbauer.
For the prime, please. So would the parents sign off first on the marriage and then it goes to the court, or is the court that decides first and then the parents? Which, can you give me the
Mr.
schedule?
Chair?
Senator Pischke.
It's an either or, Representative. So the parents can sign off, or if both parents are unwilling to sign off, they can go in front, the minor child can go in front of a judge and ask for the judge to sign off on it. But that process is a little more lengthy. So it's an either or. Hope that answers your question, Representative.
Any follow-up? Go ahead.
this does not require both the judge and the parents to sign off at all.
Mr. Chair?
Senator.
Again, it's an either or.
Any other questions from the committee? Senator Pischke, do you have a House prime on this bill, or could you maybe talk to us a bit about the process here for this?
Well, since the bill's been amended, it won't be on the bill. If it does pass, it wouldn't be on the floor until Wednesday. But what are you doing on Wednesday?
I'm swamped.
No, I have talked to Representative Randolph. I think he would agree to prime it on the House floor, unless anybody else here has some free time.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Representative Schaefbauer.
So the years greater than 4, what if it's 6? I mean, I met my husband my former husband, when I was 17, and there's 6 years difference. I mean, we didn't get married until later, but what happens then?
Mr. Chair?
Senator.
So here's the story. Like, I originally had this language at 10 years, and opponents found that to be too broad, too wide. And so the statistics show that most times when people do get married under the age of 18, generally their spouse is within 4 years. The statistics do show that. I'm not crazy about the 4-year number, personally. I wish it was a little broader. And I agree with Mr. Woods that it's duplicative as a check, but that's the number that we've come to an agreement on with other opponents in the other chamber. And so that's where we landed here today. If this committee does something else, I can't control what you guys do. I can barely control what I do. So here we are.
Any other questions? Any other questions from the committee? Representative Emery.
For the prime. I should have told you to
Come
stay
on
up
back. Try to retain control. Here we go.
So on section 2, number 3, subsection C. So just, I guess, kind of walk me through that. So if I shouldn't say but if the situation came up where a minor decided that they wanted to marry their childhood sweetheart or high school sweetheart, as you said, and they were in a relationship where their parents were not married, walk me through how that would go through. If one parent said yes, you can marry, and the other parent said no.
Mr. Chair?
Senator.
Thank you so much for the question. In that situation, yeah, it actually, if one parent does not allow for the sign off of it, the child would have to go through the court option then. So yeah, one parent or one guardian could block that in that path.
Okay.
Any other questions from the committee? Representative Jameson.
For the prime sponsor, please. I haven't had the privilege to discuss this bill in the past because it's always died before it's ever got in front of me, but just remind me again, what's driving this? I mean, I think you said it, but maybe say it again. What's driving you to bring this bill to us?
Mr. Chair.
Senator.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the question, Representative. Last year and the year prior, there's been an effort in the South Dakota legislature to make it illegal for people to get under the age of 18 to engage in marriage. And actually, I was at an event out in Boston, the CSG event this last summer, and they had a booth at that event, and they're promoting no marriage under the age of 18. And so it's a nationwide push to prevent marriage until the age of 18. And quite honestly, it's a little bit scary because if you think of what the age of consent is, which is 16, and if the state would take a position that you can't get married until 18, in essence, the state would then be promoting sexual activity without marriage. So that's why I think that's really dangerous if we would go down that road. And so this is my solution to that problem, is that obviously minors can engage in contracts, and there is the issue that sometimes trafficking does happen. Let's admit that. So this is my solution that narrowly tailors this so that minors can allow for a path forward to get married if they so choose, as long as the parents sign off on it or a judge signs off on it.
Any other questions? Okay, well, then we'll move to committee discussion and or action on Senate Bill 159. Representative Schaefbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move due pass.
Motion by Schaefbauer, second by Gosh for due pass. Any discussion on the motion?
Just a little bit. You know, to one of the previous comments, we aren't allowing our kids to get married under the age of 18 without the consent of the parent or the courts, but we sure are promoting sex outside of marriage under the age of 18, and if your parents won't consent to that, which you don't have to have a judge or a parent write off on that, just go to your local neighborhood convenience store and get the emergency contraceptive or, you know, any other prophylactic. So, you know what, I'm not huge on the 4 years, but I'm okay with having, you know, parents sign off on, or a judge sign off on somebody under the age of 18 getting married.
Any other discussion on the due pass motion? Oh, Representative Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know what to do here. I'm having a really hard time with the inconsistency here because this committee voted on limiting minors' access to certain apps on phones because we've all agreed that kids are vulnerable to harm and exploitation, and we've decided that minors can't even have apps on their phone. But now we're saying that kids can get married if there is an age gap of 4 years or under. And I don't know. I don't know what to do here because I believe that the original bill that we saw in State Affairs, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, was a really good bill because it just said you can't get married if you're under the age of 18. Marriage is a serious lifelong legal commitment. And also, if you're 18, you can sign legal documents, but if you're not, you can't. And now we're saying that you can if you're getting married at like the age of 16. But what happens if you wanted to get divorced at the age of 17? Can you even sign off on getting a divorce? I don't know if we have that answer. It's too late to ask that question. But I just think that there are so many power imbalances and pressures on kids, and not all parents are good parents. And we've had that discussion before, and we've seen those bills before. And if we believe that minors need protection in one area, it doesn't make sense to take those protections away in another area, especially when the consequences are even more. And I don't know how I'm going to vote yet because I want to see an amendment on the House floor that raises the age to 18, no exceptions. So I don't know if I take up the opportunity to be the prime sponsor to bring the amendment on the floor, or if I just vote this down today. I don't know, guys, but that's how I'm feeling.
Any other discussion on the due pass motion?
Mr. Chair.
Representative Overweg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm going to resist this motion. I was thinking Sunday sitting in church, there's two couples there that I know is over 10 years difference between the man and the woman, and they've been married both of them close to 50 years. I just think this is unnecessary. This is more government in our lives, and I don't understand. I'd like to see government get completely out of marriage if I had my druthers, but I don't. But I don't think this is an area where government has to stick its nose in. I think we'll just let this up to the church.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the due pass motion? Okay. Hearing none, then the motion is due pass on Senate Bill 159. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The secretary will please call the roll.
Representative Spa-Mueller.
Aye.
Emery.
No.
Gosh. Hanson.
Aye.
Healy.
Pass.
Heineman.
Aye.
Jameson.
Aye.
Lems.
No.
May.
Aye.
Reich excused. Healy.
No.
Overwig.
No.
Did I? Schaefbauer. Sorry.
Aye.
Okay. And Odenbach.
No.
7 ayes, 5 nays, 1 excused. No, it must be 8. 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I must be missing somebody. Seven, 5, and 1 excused was correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. With 7 yeas and 5 nays, the measure having received the majority of members elect passes. Senate Bill 159 goes to the floor with a do pass recommendation. Okay, moving right along to Senate Bill 175, require that an individual provide proof of citizenship when registering to vote and to declare an emergency. 8 minutes per side, seeking proponent testimony. Welcome, Senator Carley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee. Good to see you this afternoon. Senator John Carley, District 29. So this bill, SB 175, is to require an individual provide proof of citizenship when registering to vote and to declare an emergency. So if it feels like deja vu all over again, it does for me too. Last year we passed Senate Bill 68, you may recall, which required citizen-only voting, and that had almost unanimous support. Everyone cares about this issue. When questioned, the Deputy Secretary of State a few weeks ago testified to the fact at this point we are working on the honor system, just depending on each person's word for whether they're a citizen or not. Since it was reported last year, about 273 non-citizens got caught on our voter rolls. I believe this is a serious enough issue. We should be requiring proof, and so this bill is intending to do just that. In the case of even those voters, the SOS contacted them to see if they could confirm citizenship. This bill has an emergency clause on it because it will therefore be in effect for the upcoming election. So many states have already passed this, are in process, and even our federal voting is being finalized right now to require this. Some of you may have heard Senator Rounds just a couple weeks ago here down the street. He spoke and he said we need to make sure we prove citizenship for federal voting. So they were hoping the SAVE Act, which currently passed in one side of Congress, that passed, but they're waiting for the Senate to look at that as well. In this bill, there's quite a lot of cleanup by LRC, which is not supposed to be changing anything. The main section is in section 1 there, where it added the requirement that the voter, quote, has provided sufficient evidence, end quote, to demonstrate citizenship. Section 2 added what happens if the person does not provide proof of citizenship, which it means they will receive the federal-only ballot. You may remember last year you passed that bill to create a federal-only ballot, so they would get that. It also adds a request that was worked out with the Secretary of State to make sure people who are already registered don't have to do it again with documentation. Section 3 shows all the way a person can prove they're a citizen. This lines up with, for example, DPS. So if you go to DPS and get a driver's license, you need to show a passport, a birth certificate, your tribal identification card, and so forth. This one also includes a long list supplied by the federal government. This also aligns the agencies, so we begin to have similar nature of what DPS uses. The rest is cleanup. So what are some of the other things that require proof of citizenship? Well, getting a Social Security card requires that, getting a passport, certain healthcare options, student financial applications for federal requires that as well. So this isn't an onerous requirement. We shouldn't be having our voting requiring on the honor system, obviously. Thanks for your time. I stand by for questions.
Thank you, Senator. Further proponent testimony for Senate Bill 175. About 5 minutes to go.
Mr. Chair, Leah Anderson, Minnehaha County Auditor. So, interesting thing happened when Senator Carley presented this bill previously to the Senate. I was very sick and couldn't testify, but I was a little bit neutral on this bill initially because it's putting the burden on the auditors to get this documentation. And when we get, right before an election, we could get 100, 200 voter registration forms in the mail right before an election. And for us to be able to then verify that information is going to be challenging. However, on a day about 2 weeks ago, I had a gal that came in to register to vote. Happened to be for the third time she's tried this. Initially, she registered to vote, and she was one of the citizens that was removed when the Secretary of State ran their check, and she was sent a letter letting her know that she was a non-citizen and that she could not register to vote. She then showed up at our office in May of 25 and filled out a voter registration form again. Thankfully, we caught that because we saw that she was unregistered due to non-citizenship status. She showed up again 2 weeks ago, wanted to register to vote. She continues to mark that box, that honor system box on the voter registration form that she's a citizen, and she signs the form under penalty of perjury, and she is not able to register to vote. She's here legally. She has a driver's license. She even has a star on her driver's license, but what many people don't realize is that star just means that you're here legally. Doesn't mean that you're a U.S. citizen. Thankfully, now on the back of the driver's license, we have that indication starting July 1st of 25, so we can look at the driver's license and see that indication on the back. However, in her case, she's here as a permanent resident. So when I went to our state's attorney and I said, okay, she's tried to register to vote 3 times now and signed that form under penalty of perjury, do we want to pursue this? Because she knows she can't register. They said no, that penalty of perjury statement on that voter registration form has no weight whatsoever, and they were not going to pursue this. So I just thought that was a very good timing to be able to share that story with you. So please, I don't know how we're going to implement this, honestly, but let's get it going.
Okay, any other proponent testimony with a couple minutes to go?
Hello, Chair and committee members. To me, it just seems very, very reasonable and not even all that strict to require that we be citizens in order to vote in the United States of America.
Could you
And I
introduce
don't want-
yourself? Excuse me, ma'am.
Oh,
Could
sorry,
you please
Lucy
state-
McBride,
state your-
Spearfish, South Dakota.
Thank you.
Okay, so it just seems reasonable that if we're allowing not proof, I mean, if we were to disregard, the strict proof that is being laid out here, then it would almost, I feel as a citizen, devalue my vote. So I hope that proof of citizenship is required and hope to see this through. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Further proponent testimony here in the room. Minute or so to go.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tom Diedrich. I'm the Deputy Secretary of State. We'd like to thank Senator Carley for listening to us and getting some amendments on there, especially about bringing the CFR in. That brought in a whole new set of ways in which a person can prove that they're a citizen. And it also has, although it's rather clunky and maybe really clunky for married women whose name has changed, there is a way for them to go down that path and bring documentation in. He also had the LRC change it so that the grandfathered in people who are already there. And I would say over the next 5 years, we'll have almost everybody in the state will have gone through some type of check to see if they are a U.S. citizen. Thank you.
Thank you. Further proponent testimony. Okay, we've got a couple online. We're about out of time, so we've got time for brief Me Too's, starting with Rick Weibel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. Rick Weibel, Elkton, South Dakota, representing myself. Me too.
Thank you. And Laura Kodalik, are you there? Can you hear us? I see her, but she's on mute.
Yep, I am here, and I hadn't planned on testifying for this, but I would be in support of this, definitely.
Can you restate your name, please, ma'am, and who you represent?
I'm sorry, Laura Katalik, District 18, and I represent myself.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other proponents here in the room? Okay, then we will turn to opponent testimony for Senate Bill 175. Are there any opponents?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Ellie Bailey. I'm a registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Advocacy Network for Women in opposition to Senate Bill 175. South Dakota's elections are already safeguarded by strong measures to ensure that only United States citizens can vote and that only United States citizens do vote. As you heard in some of the proponent testimony, the law already requires under SDCL 12-4-1.2 that a voter registration form must include a certification of voter eligibility by which an applicant attests under penalty of perjury that the applicant is a citizen of the United States. So really the true concern is that by imposing unnecessary barriers to the registration process, we are inevitably negatively impacting voters who are otherwise eligible to vote but fail to provide sufficient documentation. So think of our kids, our students going off in the fall to Vermilion or to Brookings. How many of those kids take along their official documentation? And certainly we don't want to disenfranchise those people from being able to vote and to register to vote. So we ask that you oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Samantha Chapman. I represent the ACLU of South Dakota. We'd also like to be on record in opposition to this bill. My testimony is really similar to Ms. Bailey's. I won't repeat everything, so we ask you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents here in the room? And okay, nobody online? Okay, so we'll give the prime a chance for a brief rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator John Carley, District 29. Just to follow up, a couple things we heard from the opponents. Last year, that one of the opponents also confirmed that a non-citizen had actually voted in our elections as well. So that was interesting to hear that. They kind of confirmed that. We heard some testimony that the honor system doesn't always work. We always wish the honor system would work. Unfortunately, it doesn't always. So that's why proof of citizenship makes a lot of sense. Students can certainly still vote, get their register to vote properly. They have to do it for going away to school, getting federal funds anyway. And finally, I'll just conclude that this also has to do with registering to vote. There was initially some confusion that, hey, this is going to prevent me from voting, or I'm going to have to get checked every time. Nope, if you're already registered, you're good to go. This is those who will be newly registering. That's where we need that proof for check of citizenship. So would appreciate your support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close the taking of public testimony, and we will turn to questions from the committee. Are there committee questions? Representative Baumüller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for the prime. So on June 2nd, I plan to go vote, and then this goes into effect July 1st. I do plan to vote in the general. What is going to change for me if this goes into effect from the primary to the general?
Mr. Chair.
Senator.
Yeah. Thank you, Representative. Actually, with the emergency provision, this would go into place as soon as it's signed. So that helps be ahead of the primary. Now, for your particular situation, it would probably change nothing, and I suspect everyone on the committee it wouldn't change anything, because probably all of you are registered to vote already. And so that would make no difference. So it'd only be people that are coming newly registering that we would be checking their proof to make sure they're citizens when they register.
Any follow-up? Do we think there will be follow-up questions, or we're all good? Okay. Any other questions from the committee? All righty then, we will turn to committee discussion and or action. Representative Heineman.
I move to pass.
Motion by Heineman, second by Hanson is due pass on Senate Bill 175. Any discussion on that motion? Okay. Seeing none, then those in favor would say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion is to do pass, and the secretary will please call the roll.
Representative Baumüller.
Aye.
Emery.
Aye.
Gosh. Hanson.
Aye.
No. Heineman.
Aye.
Jamison.
Aye.
Lems.
Aye.
May.
Aye.
Reich excused. Schaefbauer.
Aye.
Overwig.
Aye.
Otenbach.
Aye.
11 ayes, 1 nay, 1 excused.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. After receiving a majority of members-elect, Senate Bill 175, the due pass motion on Senate Bill 175 passes. Senate Bill 175 goes to the floor with a due pass recommendation. That will move us to our last item for the evening, SJR 508, proposing and submitting to the voters at the next general election amendments to the Constitution of the State of South Dakota, removing the Lieutenant Governor as presiding officer of the Senate. 8 minutes per side. Proponent testimony first. Welcome, Senator Kolbeck.
Hi, thank you. Mr. Chairman, Steve Kolbeck, District 2, Brandon, South Dakota. This SJR, we've had a lot of them on our agenda yet this year, but this is actually the only one that the only avenue we have is to go to the state constitution. And first and foremost, I should say that this is not personal. This has nothing to do with any lieutenant governor candidates. This has nothing to do with the current lieutenant governor, but the timing is now, because otherwise it will be personal. And I'll hit on that first. But as you know, the Senate has been in flux in the last few years. Last year we actually had 3 presidents. We have to have the lieutenant governor as our president. So we started out with Lieutenant Governor Larry Roden, then we had Pro Tem Chris Carr, and then we went to the new lieutenant governor, who we did not pick, and then Tony Van Huysen, who's doing a great job. All 3 of them have done a great job. We're not arguing that fact at all. But it is in flux that the Senate was at no fault of our own, because we don't have a choice. So the second thing that changed is that we don't pick at the convention anymore. We don't pick the lieutenant governor. That's a recent change that has happened, and that is picked by the governor candidate. So next is we are different. You're going to hear from opposition that the U.S. Senate does it this way, and there's 50-50, and the vice president gets to vote. We are not that way. We're an odd number. We're 35. We can, if we choose, if we're allowed, and this passes, to choose a president pro tem, and then a leader, and then our whips. That's all we're asking. It's a separation of powers, we believe. The executive branch does have some pull in the Senate. It doesn't happen every day, but it can happen, and eventually it does. So what I mentioned at the first is that it is not personal. And this is the only way we can change this, is on the state constitution. And if we don't do it now, we would have to wait, or I would suggest that we wait another 4 years, because then it is personal. Then you're talking about someone, and then you're going to change that. So for those reasons, and there's more people to talk before, I think that we would hope to pass this SGR 504.
Thank you, Senator. Further proponent testimony. Welcome.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the State Affairs Committee. Senator Chris Carr, District 11. I'm going to try to keep it within your time limit. This is an important issue, and I want you to understand what we've been experiencing in the Senate. This discussion, as was mentioned, is not about personalities. It's not about any one individual. It's about the institution of the Senate. What is best for long-term integrity of that body? The question before you is straightforward. Should the Senate function as a self-governing legislative body responsible for its own proceedings, or should the executive branch retain a vote in a voting role within that chamber? Recent clarifications from the Supreme Court confirmed the Lieutenant Governor may cast a tie-breaking vote on final passage when the Senate is equally divided. That decision settled the legal question, but it also created a practical and structural issue that we now confront. Under our Constitution, 18 affirmative votes are required for final passage of a bill. In most scenarios, a bill with 17 votes fails. A bill with 17 yes and 1 no fails. A bill with 17 yes and 16 no fails. But when the opposition increases to exactly 17 no votes, creates a 17-17 tie, the Lieutenant Governor may cast a deciding vote. In that narrow circumstance, a bill with only 17 elected senators in support can pass. In other words, increased opposition to a bill can facilitate its passage rather than defeat. I just want you to think about that for a second. The result is structurally inconsistent with a body that requires 18 elected senators to enact a law. It effectively allows a single vote from the executive branch to override the collective opposition of 17 senators. Is this healthy for the institution? I'll ask you to think about that. While we've seen the practical consequences of this, the accusations of gamesmanship, the strategic absences, and attempts to influence the presiding officer. When a member is absent, the absence is not counted towards equal division. In certain scenarios, an absence can become more powerful than a no vote because it prevents a tie and removes that authority from the Lieutenant Governor. This dynamic invites manipulation. Any structure that incentivizes procedural maneuvering over substantive debate weakens the credibility of the chamber. There's also a representational concern. When a senator is absent, the Lieutenant Governor is not merely breaking a tie. In effect, the executive branch is exercising decisive influence over a district that is not represented on the floor at that moment. That vote will only occur when it determines the outcome. It allows the executive branch to choose when to participate in legislative decisions without bearing the same electoral accountability in the members of the body. We all have to take a vote on every bill. This allows an executive branch member to choose when to vote, to potentially be lobbied when to vote, and to replace another senator's vote. The legislature is the branch of the people. Our structure should reflect its independence. This does not remove the Lieutenant Governor from the executive branch. It simply asks whether the Senate should preside over its own affairs and determine its own outcomes without executive voting authority. For the long-term health of the institution and clarity of representative democracy, this proposal deserves to be sent to the voters, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Carr. Further proponent testimony. About 4 minutes to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Senator Tom Pischke, District 25. As a recovering House member, I just want to come up here and almost say a me too. But as you guys know, I served 6 years in the House of Representatives and then moved over to the Senate. And it was a change at first, there's no doubt about it. And I just want to let you know that this is a big deal in the idea of separation of powers. Over the last 4 years, I've served under Lieutenant Governor Roden, and then Chris Carr was the presiding officer for a few weeks, and then now we have Tony Venhuizen. And they're all good people, there's no doubt about that, but there are little instances here and there where gamesmanship does come into play. And as you guys know, the Speaker of the House presides over the House, and you don't have that influence from the executive branch. So I just want to let you know, as someone that's come from the House and seen both sides of how this plays out, I just want to urge you to, because you might not think, I'm in the House and I don't really care. It is a big deal, and I really do want to urge you to support this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any further proponent testimony here in the room? Anybody online? Nobody online. Okay, then we'll turn to opponent testimony in the room. 8 minutes. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Nathan Sanderson, I'm the Executive Director of the South Dakota Retailers Association. First, I'll mention what I have mentioned every time we've come up in opposition to the proposed constitutional amendments. We're going to have a super packed ballot. You're going to vote for all of the federal offices. You're going to have a whole bunch of local offices. You've got school board, county commission, municipal elections. We're going to have a really full ballot. And I'm not talking about the constitutional amendments that have already been proposed. You've heard this. There are 4 for sure that are going to be on the ballot, 3 that are currently being circulated, and now 1 left in front of you. That would be 8 proposed constitutional amendments, and our board of directors believes that's too many, and that's part of the reason why we've been up here. For this one specifically, some of you may know I'm a historian. I've got a PhD in history from the University of Nebraska, and I like to look at these things kind of in context. And one of the things in context that is worth mentioning is that this particular provision of South Dakota's Constitution, which is of course modeled on the United States Constitution, this particular provision has been in place since statehood, 1889. This sentence remains unchanged. A number of times in the past, at least 3, there have been efforts to change this particular provision. Those have all been rejected. It's kind of interesting to hear about the long-term health of the institution, and I would argue that the long-term health of the institution is best served by leaving the Constitution exactly the way that it is. You know, the Supreme Court made a decision here recently, and it wasn't really a decision, right? They sort of provided guidance for the legislature, and that guidance is in fact, exactly in line with what it has been since statehood. I'll read the line that is proposed to be removed here. The lieutenant governor shall be president of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless the senators be equally divided. This has been the case since 1889. And so I would suggest that the recent circumstances that we have seen absolutely are unusual. That does not mean that the process or the system or the Constitution is broken. I would submit to you that the Constitution is operating exactly as it has been designed to for the last number of years since the beginning of the state of South Dakota. We'd encourage you to leave it as is and reject this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents here in the room? Okay, and we have one online, and I'm going to try to pronounce this, Kelly Rittershausen. How'd I do?
Did fantastic. Perfect. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you. State your name, who you're with, and please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee for allowing me time this evening. My name is Kelly Rittershausen. I am the Executive Director of the National Lieutenant Governors Association. The NLGA is the national nonprofit educational association about and for lieutenant governors and the seconds in command in the states and territories. I'm appearing today to offer the NLGA and myself to you, Mr. Chair, and to the committee members as a resource about the office of Lieutenant Governor, and to share just a few trends about the office as this committee considers the structure and use of the office of Lieutenant Governor. The Lieutenant Governor is the second highest ranking official of any state, and as such, a Lieutenant Governor is a competitive advantage for a state, meaning the range of duties and the use of the office can be leveraged in many ways to help the state advance. Lieutenant Governors across the country oversee cabinet departments and commissions, lead task forces on timely topics, and can lead on a wide array of policy areas on behalf of constituents. Every lieutenant governor in the nation has a range of duties, and half preside over the Senate. For those that preside, their powers range from making parliamentary rulings and casting tie-breaking votes to making appointments to Senate committees and other bodies. In addition, all lieutenant governors must be ready to become governor at a moment's notice, and the state is arguably best served when the array of duties for a lieutenant governor ensures the lieutenant governor is best positioned for success should succession occur. For example, in North Dakota, the Lieutenant Governor presides over the Senate and chairs the North Dakota Trade Office, the Northern Plains Unmanned Space Systems Authority, the Capitol Grounds Planning Commission, among other duties. Lieutenant governors may derive responsibilities from the Constitution, the legislature, the governor, and through personal initiative. The historic trend generally is that lieutenant governors have been gaining duties from legislatures and from governors over the past 25 years in particular. This has been in response in part to growth in technology, economic globalization, and response to national security and emergency incidents. With this broader range of state needs, lieutenant governors have been used in growing roles. Eliminating a duty and adding no duties to the office of lieutenant governor is not aligned with trends that I have observed nationwide. And likewise, members may consider if the result is the most advantageous, efficient, and effective use of the office for the benefit of South Dakota and its taxpayers. Lieutenant governors in many states act as a valued, fair, and neutral presiding officer of the Senate, serving as a bridge from the executive to the legislative branch and vice versa. It is the mission of NLGA to contribute to the efficient and effective operation of government and the office of Lieutenant Governor. For these reasons, I thank you for letting me share these points with you, and I look forward to assisting you as a resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents? All right, then we will give the prime a chance for a brief rebuttal.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. District 2, Steve Kolbeck, State Senator. So just to remind the folks, again, there's a lot of things going to be on the ballot. That is very true. The opposition says that. But again, this is one of the only thing, if not the only thing, that this is our only way to change this. It has to be a change in the Constitution. A lot of those things that are going to be on the ballot could be legislated. So that is a big difference. The good news is that when we heard this bill over in the Senate, there was 13 things going to be on the ballot, so that's dropped to 8 now, so that is good news. It's going down. The U.S. Constitution does not have the statement 18 members elect, so that is a difference. So to say that things haven't changed in the last 100 years is simply not true. The lieutenant governor used to caucus with the majority party. He used to assign the committees, and he used to do a lot of other duties. That has all changed in the last few years. And again, remember, the other change is that at convention, we've changed that too. So please remember that. And, you know, since you guys are the members of the House and have 70 and an equal number, and you could tie, maybe Lieutenant Governor should preside over the House. I don't know. That's just a suggestion that came to us when we were back there. But we could just move him over to the other side. But to say that we can't break our own ties when we have 35 people, when the House does it anyway, and they do it consistently, and they haven't run into trouble, I don't think is a valid argument. So with that, I do appreciate the opposition, and I understand. Those are valid concerns. And history is something to be appreciated. It certainly is. But to us, right now, the time when we don't know who the next lieutenant governor is going to be, we have no idea. I think that now is the time for the Senate to try to seek some more independence from the executive branch. And we would hope that you would support us. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll close the public testimony and open it up to questions from the committee. Any questions? Representative Lems.
For the prime. Hi. So what do you think, besides just modeling this after the federal level, was the reasoning of the crafters of our Constitution for setting it up this way?
Mr. Chair.
Senator.
It's a great question. I think in a different time, in a different place, I think that probably the lieutenant governor had, as I said, they used to do committees, they used to do caucus. I think that it was probably a different agenda. So I don't know why they would do it that way. I probably wouldn't have a great answer for you, but I can just tell you that things have changed. And in the last few years, when we see what's happening and we see those changes, we would like more independence. But it's a great question. I can't answer it very well.
Any other questions from the committee? It's getting late. The questions are dwindling. Rep. Heineman, there we go.
Prime sponsor. Couple of questions, please.
Go ahead.
Okay. First question may be a little facetious, but how much is too many proposals on the ballot?
Senator Kolbeck.
Mr. Chair. You know, I don't know if there is too many. We decide that. If we're going to put 10 on, if we're going to put 12 on, that's up to us. I do think it's a consideration, though, but I think that the voters of South Dakota are very confident of making decisions, and I think that they can do as many as we put on there.
Follow up, Rep. Heineman?
And a separate issue, and I'm glad you brought it up at the very end of your testimony here. The lieutenant governor is no longer elected. And you mentioned that, the convention, you know, we did it through the convention process. I would think that would be a key point that you should expound on, because he's no longer an elected, or she is not an elected position that's making decisions in your Senate.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Colbeck, would you like to expound on that?
Yes. So I think that goes back to the previous testimony where things have changed. You know, when people say things haven't changed over the last 100 years, it has. And I'm not saying that the decision to take it away from the convention was right or wrong, or that we have a better system now. I'm just saying that something is different. And when you have those differences and when things change, I think you have to adapt. And again, the timing has to be such that you don't make it personal. And now it's the timing.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, then we will turn to committee discussion and or action. Representative Heineman.
Second. Dupass.
Motion by Heineman, second by, did I hear May? Motion by Heineman, second by May is due pass. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the preparation. I think I agree totally with your concept. I hope the voters will see that as well. To me, when we made that change constitutionally, or for the lieutenant governor, that was the first question I asked. Was he's not a non-voter, or he's not elected, so but he's going to have input in, or she is going to have input in the Senate. And so, you know, that's come up a little bit. That there's other issues, but I encourage you to support this motion.
Any other discussion on the due pass motion? Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, well, then the motion is due pass on SJR 508. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The secretary will please call the roll.
Representative Spa-Mueller.
Aye.
Emery.
No.
Gosh. Hanson. Healy.
No.
Heineman.
Aye.
Jameson.
Aye.
Lems.
Aye.
May.
Aye.
Reich, excuse Schaefbauer. Aye. Overwig.
Aye.
Odenbach.
No.
9 ayes, 3 nays, 1 excused.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. After receiving a majority of members-elect, the due pass motion passes. SJR 508 goes to the floor with a due pass recommendation. That will conclude our agenda for this evening, so the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by
Second.
Overwig, seconded by Healy. All those in favor of adjourn would please say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.
SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.